Hi everyone, today we are talking about the Hunchback of Notre Dame and its analysis, symbols, motifs inside of this novel. And it's the contents by syllabi, so we have 4 contents according to the 4 lessons. The French Romanticism, the first content, so we're going to talk about Victor Hugo and his literary activities, and the main work, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So the second topic is about the main themes like the abandon, the origin of intolerance, outcast, fate, asceticism, and also some of other themes that are describing in the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And the third content is the analysis of characters, symbols, allegory, and motifs in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and literary elements, genre, narrator, and point of view, major conflict, etc. in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and the use of grotesque figures in this novel. Of course, I will explain you what is grotesque at all, and then you will be able to find out what kind of grotesque figures were described in this novel. So let's get started. The first content is about the French Romanticism, 19th century French literature. So French literature enjoyed enormous international prestige and success in the 19th century. The first part of the century was dominated by Romanticism until around the mid-century realism emerged, and at least partly as a reaction. So Romanticism, this period, it concerned the developments in French literature during the dynamic period in French history that saw the rise of democracy and fitful end of monarchy and empire. So let's look at a short overview of 19th century French literature. So French literature from the first half of the century was dominated by Romanticism, as I said before, and which is associated with such authors as Victor Hugo, Alexandre Dumas, then Alphonse de Lamartine, and so on. Their influence was felt in theater, poetry, prose fiction. French Romanticism used forms such as the historical novel, the romance, the roman noir, like Black Roman, or Gothic novel, subjects like traditional myth, including the myth of the romantic hero, and then nationalism, the natural world, and the common man, and the styles of sentimentalism, exoticism, and orientalism. Foreign influences played a big role in this, of course, especially those of Shakespeare, Sir Walter Scott, Byron, Goethe, Friedrich Schiller, and so on. And let's talk about Victor Hugo. He was the main representative of French Romanticism, and he was not only novelist, he was also a poet, dramatist, and is one of the most important of French Romantic writers. So we all know him as the Frenchman who brought us novels such as Les Miserables and Notre Dame de Paris. It's the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Notre Dame de Paris is the original name of this novel. However, outside of France, it's often forgotten that he was also an excellent poet, dramatist, and even political activist. Colored by personal tragedy and political exile, his life was almost as dramatic as his work and was a source of inspiration for many of the characters in his novels. So, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, it's the masterpiece of his literary activities, and the main character is a hunchback. His name is Quasimodo, and the historical novel Notre Dame de Paris, so the Hunchback of Notre Dame, brought Hugo wider fame and condemned the harshness of medieval Parisian society under the reign of Louis XI. Victor Hugo began writing The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1829, largely to make his contemporaries more aware of the value of the Gothic architecture, which was neglected and often destroyed to be replaced by new buildings or defaced by replacement of parts of buildings in a newer style. For instance, the medieval stained glass panels of Notre Dame had been replaced by white glass to let more light into the church. And this explains the large descriptive sections of the book, which far exceed the requirements of the story. A few years earlier, Hugo had already published a paper entitled War to the Demolishers. And so this book specifically aimed at saving Paris' medieval architecture. So, of course, as in every novel, we also have here the major themes, symbols, motifs, and let's talk about the major themes. So I chose 3 of them. Of course, they have several major themes of this novel, but every time I choose just most important ones that are so necessary for you to know. The first one is abandoned, and the second one is the origin of intolerance, and third one is fate. Let's talk about the abandoned. What does it mean? Everywhere, so you know who is the abandoned. Of course, if you don't know, after finishing the book, you will be aware of it. They have several characters, and some of them are abandoned. The first one is Quasimodo. So everywhere Quasimodo turns, it seems there is the effect of being abandoned. Even his own body abandons him, leaving to face the contempt of the world without the power to speak, though perhaps the sense of hearing joining in the mass migration away from the tortured soul is such a positive development that it almost makes up for the rest. Of course, it's not just Quasimodo who is the novel's representative of its themes surrounding abandonment. Claude Frollo, the priest, and his brother share the hunchback's pain of parental abandonment, though at least in their case there is cold comfort in knowing it wasn't by choice. But through this, the individual examples of abandonment achieve a broader thematic coherence in the novel as a reflection of mass sense of abandonment felt by the lower classes of Paris. The second theme is the origin of intolerance. What is the origin of intolerance? The story of the public's intolerance toward Quasimodo is a fuller exploration of the origins of intolerance. Quasimodo cannot be tolerated as an active member of society because such a repulsive appearance can only be the physical manifestation of something more sinister inside. This thematic examination of intolerance being rooted in not just a lack of understanding but a concerted lack of desire to understand riches, its logically extreme conclusion in the creation or reaction of the King of France to an uprising stimulated precisely by his own lack of attention to the needs of the people. He doubles down on his own failure as monarch by trying to kill the body in the mistaken assumption that the head will then die. So you know that there was an execution of Esmeralda that was not so fair. It was injustice, that she was not guilty, but at the end she was killed. And of course it's the main the main theme to be the origin of intolerance. And the fate, of course, the other one of the most important and necessary themes of this novel, because Frollo carves his word on the wall and is obsessed by its meaning, which is fate. When you read, you will find it, this scene. The vagaries of fate and the inability to fully understand or control is a matter of great obsession for Frollo. Frollo's conceptual view of the infrastructure of fate is reflected in the sudden twists of destiny that characters experience without warning, but that should also be without much surprise, is expressed most concretely with his seemingly convoluted and paradoxical explanation of how works to Esmeralda. The novel routinely demonstrates its own adherence to the concept that while fate cannot be controlled by mere humans, the intensity of its consequences can be manipulated by one's actions. And of course, also we have secondary themes. So we talked about the major themes. You can learn these 3 themes. And other themes, outcast. So Quasimodo looks different and feels he doesn't belong. He is not as a human, but he is a human. So you can find out the grotesque figures here too. If you know something about grotesque, you can easily find out these meanings. But if you don't, I will explain in the upcoming slides. So discrimination, it's also the main sorry for pausing. So we were talking about themes of the novel. So discrimination is also one of the main important themes of this novel, because you know that Esmeralda is a gypsy, and here gypsies are discriminated and treated as witches. Even at the beginning of the novel, Frollo treated to Gypsy Esmeralda not as a civil person. And the historical context also important theme, life in medieval Paris. So when we read this novel from the original text, we can easily see the lifestyle of that period Parisian people, and also the main lifestyles of them. So the other theme is architecture, is personification. The Notre Dame as an important character in the story, along with the bell, which have names and the speaking status. And the abandoned, we talked about it, the origin of intolerance, fate. So Quasimodo, although he is the main character of this novel, but he is also the symbol and also the major theme of this novel. So, in fact, a symbol for the forgotten Gothic architecture of Paris. So, he symbolizes the old version, old style of Paris. And the book is Hugo's way of alerting the citizens of the City of Light to preserve the beautiful buildings of the city. At the dawn of the 19th century, many Gothic buildings were demolished and new modern constructions were built in their place. The Gothic architecture became undervalued and their writer became disturbed because of this. One example of the destruction of the Gothic buildings was the replacement of the original stained glass windows of Notre Dame with plain white glass, just to let light inside the cathedral. In 1829, Victor Hugo began his masterpiece, which was a reminder of the importance of Gothic architecture. The book focuses more on the style and the details of the buildings than on the story itself. And also asceticism is the main theme and motive in this novel, because you know what is asceticism. It's coming from the old old times, old religious times. One of the main themes of the novel, it's asceticism, and the meaning of this word is the self-discipline and avoiding of all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. So maybe you know some people that they are prized and they are forbidden to get married and to have in any relationship with a woman. So it's the example for asceticism. And here in the novel, Claude Frollo is the main representative of asceticism. And he was forbidden to love, even love, and not just touch or not just to get married, but even to love any woman. But so gradually we can see that he had some feelings towards Esmeralda. So that's why Victor Hugo just criticized asceticism within this scene, because he was against to asceticism and he thought that it limits human's life. So let's talk about main characters. So as I said before, Quasimodo is a main character because even the name of the novel in Russian, in French language and in English language and also in Azerbaijan language, all of them are symbolizes that the main character is the church and Quasimodo. So Quasimodo is one of the most recognizable and misunderstood and interpreted characters in the history of literature. Not just in French literature, I mean in world literature. And Quasimodo is a central character in Victor Hugo's novel. But just how well do people really know this famous character? That he is a physically malformed creature who swings nimbly high on the precipice of the cathedral and is charged with ringing bells is about as far as most people go. How many are aware that Quasimodo has been driven deaf by the ear-splitting reverberations resulting from tintinnabulation of the bells inside Notre Dame? And how many realize that he received his most unusual name as a result of being abandoned as an infant at Notre Dame on Quasimodo Sunday, the first Sunday after Easter? Though Quasimodo is referenced in the well-known English title, Hugo's own title, Notre Dame de Paris, centers the novel on the cathedral itself. And the second main character is Claude Frollo, Quasimodo's benefactor and archdeacon of Notre Dame. Frollo is a particularly idiosyncratic fallen priest, where once he was the very portrait of sacred belief, he has since lapsed into the dark arts of alchemy and necromancy. He also a lusty thirst for Esmeralda, which cannot go unquenched regardless of the consequences. So the third character is Esmeralda. Sweet, beautiful, enchanting Esmeralda is one of the pivotal characters. So it's a little bit controversial. She possesses exotic beauty, a goat named Jolly, and an amulet she believes is key to rediscovering her long-lost family. She is rescued from being kidnapped by virile Captain Feb, and her attraction to her rescue directly leads to a set of circumstances in which Archdeacon Frollo stabs Feb, but Esmeralda is blamed. Lovely Catholic-style torture frees her tongue and succeeds only in receiving a death sentence for a crime she did not commit. Her friendship with Quasimodo leads to her seeking sanctuary inside Notre Dame. And the other character is Captain Feb. Feb is basically an upstanding and honorable officer which helps him win the love of the innocent Esmeralda. Feb is a bit of an innocent as well, and that causes him to make one single very tragic mistake. Following his rescue of Esmeralda from her kidnappers, he confesses to Frollo the time and place of his secret rendezvous with the beautiful gypsy girl. And the final main character is Pierre Gringoire. Gringoire is a starting poet who becomes yet another addition to the growing list of men who fall under the enchanting spell of Esmeralda's bewitching combination of innocence and beauty. Only Esmeralda's agreement to marry him saves Gringoire from the fatal conclusion of his own kidnapping episode. The marriage never takes place, however, and Gringoire later became an accomplice in Frollo's plot to entice Esmeralda from the security of sanctuary behind the church doors. And the main symbols, I just found three main symbols here: the cathedral, spider and fly, then jelly. So let's listen, and I will explain you the main meanings of these three symbols. The cathedral, the very title indicates that the Notre Dame Cathedral is meant to be taken as a symbol as well, a literally concrete structure. Quasimodo is so attuned to the vibrations of the building, since he cannot hear that, he views it as a living organism. The symbolic value of the cathedral lends it an appropriate status as one of the three parts of the Trinity of purity and innocence, alongside the hunchback and the gypsy girl. When he learns that Frollo has corrupted both Esmeralda and Notre Dame by making it a sanctuary for his unholy lust and black magic, Quasimodo tosses him through the air so that Frollo literally falls from the grace that is the cathedral's masonry. And the second the second symbol is spider and fly. It symbolizes of printing, book, and religion, so cathedral. You know, these two creatures have to be taken symbolically because Frollo just won't let it go, as he intently observes the process of spider laying a trap for a fly. It only makes sense that he would see himself as the fly caught in the web of lust that is coming back to devour him after rejecting and denying natural urges for so long. Likewise, the object of his lust can be seen as personification of a fly trapped within the complex legal web of the church, where it gets kind of weirdly philosophical. However, it is associational. Sorry for pausing again. If you have a little child, it's so hard to make a video lesson. So I was talking about the spider and fly symbol. So spider is a symbol of printing and fly is a symbol of religion. And here spider to the printing press and the fly to Notre Dame symbolizes kind of the stretch, but then Frollo is kind of a strange bird. And the other symbol is jelly here. So jelly. And it's a symbol of loyalty and happiness. You know that Jelly is Esmeralda's goat. And one of the most memorable characters in the book is the loyal goat, Jelly. So it's its name. This is one of the literature's all-time great animal figures, and part of the reason may be that as a symbol, Jelly transcends everything. Generally, a goat symbolizes stubbornness, but when viewed from a different perspective, what seems like hard-headedness may just actually be a manifestation of loyalty and commitment. Jelly could symbolize fate as well, since Gringoire seems to recognize the inevitability of his winding up with the goat rather than Esmeralda. One thing to keep in mind when trying to decide exactly what Hugo was trying to say with his memorable goat In a tale defined by exceeding misery, Jolly never seems to be particularly troubled. Surely the fact the only happy inhabitant of the novel is an animal says something. So, literary elements, of course you should know about the literary elements of the novels too. So, what's the genre of this novel? It's a Gothic tragedy. And setting and context, the setting place is the Paris, France, and most of the setting place is the church, specifically the Notre Dame Cathedral, late Middle Ages, during the reign of Louis IX. And narrator point of view, the narrator is a third person, limited, omniscient narrator who occasionally deviates from the main plot to describe aspects of various characters' past so as to better explain their words and actions. So, protagonist and antagonist. The two main protagonists are Quasimodo and Esmeralda. The main antagonist is Claude Frollo, a churchman who raised Quasimodo, but who is a very conflicted and frustrated man who is obsessed with Esmeralda. And major conflict is the love triangle between Esmeralda, the handsome Captain Feb, and the sinful Claude Frollo. It's this novel triangle that sets off most of the plot developments. Of course, if I teach this novel to the master degree, we also talk about the archetypes and also binary oppositions. So sometimes some literary critics claim that there is no any character like Esmeralda, Frollo, and Feb. They are like they are archetypes of anima and animus, and just only one real character is Gringoire. So, but of course you don't know anything about archetypes. That's why I don't want to open this wide knowledge to you, because it would be so hard for you to understand. And if we meet on master, of course we can talk about these conflicts. And grotesque figure. Maybe you have some information about the grotesque, maybe you don't have, so I have to explain. We have here two grotesque figures, the architecture of the cathedral and the appearance of Quasimodo. But what is grotesque at all? The English word first appears in the 1560s as a noun borrowed from French, so it's French-rooted word, and comes originally from the Italian grotesca, literally of a cave. So you know where is cave. From the Italian grotta, cave. Its meaning is cave, an extravagant style of ancient Roman decorative art. So rediscovered at Rome at the end of the 15th century and subsequently imitated. And as an adjective, it means odd or unnatural in shape, appearance, or character, fantastically ugly or absurd. So fantastic in the shaping and combination of forms, as in decorative work combining in conjures human and animal figures with scrolls and so on. So you have some image about grotesque. And when you read the book, I want you to find out the descriptions of these two figures. So you should choose some paragraphs about the grotesque figures. When you encounter with grotesque figures of grotesque appearance of Quasimodo or grotesque architecture of the cathedral, you can choose special paragraphs about the grotesque figure, and you can send to me, or you can just tell me during our seminar. Then analysis of some quotations from the novel. I chose just two main quotes. The first one is by Claude Frollo, "This will kill that." So here we have this and that. This, it means book, and that it symbolizes cathedral. And Claude Frollo was raised in the church. his parents having died of the plague when he was a young man, yet he is very ill-suited to the role and resents some of the restrictions of his religious life. He is intensely attracted to women, to arcane power and to other things forbidden to him, but he is also looking for a higher meaning or significance that might justify the sad events of his life. As a failed alchemist and silent critic of the church, Claude Frollo foretells that the book he is reading, so this, will eventually kill or replace that, and he is pointing at the cathedral. He is foretelling a transition from religion to science in the social discourse. Hugo's contemporary readers in France, familiar as they were with the French Revolution and the subsequent reduction in prestige experienced by the Catholic Church in France, would have read Frollo's remark as prophetic. So, as you know, nowadays, really, the science is just widened, and we have really improved, progressed science, and religion is controversial nowadays. So, they have a lot of atheists, deists, and they have people that they don't want to relate to any religious activities, or just they don't want to do something in religious context. So it's really good of foretelling about the how to say about the books killing to the church. And the second quote is about why was I not made of stone like you. This quote is told by Quasimodo, and he has just helped Esmeralda escape. He is riding off with Pierre, who he is her husband in name, if not in actual fact. He knows she can never return and that he will never see her again. He expresses his sorrow to a stone gargoyle, which is incapable of feeling pain. Quasimodo believes that he physically resembles the gargoyle, but was born a human being capable of suffering emotional hurt. So, another quote is by narrator, love is like a tree. It grows by itself, roots itself deeply in our being, and continues to flourish over a heart in ruin. The inexplicable fact is that the blinder it is, the more tenacious it is. It's never stronger than when it's completely unreasonable. It's by narrator, and Victor Hugo is showing that unreasonable love, such as Esmeralda's unrequited passion for Feb, is stronger and more compelling than more reasonable attachments. In this novel, love is the motivation behind Frollo's attempt to kidnap Esmeralda, his attempt to murder Feb, and Quasimodo's decision to kill Frollo, his father figure, and one of the only people who has ever been kind to Quasimodo, for laughing during Esmeralda's execution. And the final thing is, I chose the poem that was told by Quasimodo when he rescued Esmeralda from the execution in the church. And this is the poem itself. I would like to read it. Look not at the face, young girl, look at the heart. The heart of a handsome young man is often deformed. There are hearts in which love does not keep. Young girl, the pine is not beautiful. It's not beautiful like the poplar, but it keeps its foliage in winter. Alas, what is the use of saying that? That which is not beautiful has no right to exist. Beauty loves only beauty. April turns her back on January. Beauty is perfect. Beauty can do all things. Beauty is the only thing which does not exist by halves. The raven flies only by day. The owl flies only by night. The swan flies by day and by night. So it's really a touchable poem, and it's full of binary oppositions. I would like you to find them, and I would like you to analyze this poem, which told by Quasimodo. It's not written by Quasimodo, of course, it's written by Hugo, and inside of this poem you will be aware of many interesting facts and things by Victor Hugo himself. And thanks a lot for watching. See you on seminar, and please read the book from the original version, not the adopted version or not the translated version. Just try to read the original variant, and I will send it to you, of course, and try to do all the home tasks that I gave you in this slide. So see you next time. Bye bye.